Hello, good people of YouTube! Welcome to episode 5 of YouTales, the show where I sail the seas of our superfluously selfish sight in search of shining stars. Today, I'm looking at a newcomer to the world of YouTube animation, Georden Whitman. Usually in this segment, I go over the past work and reputation of YouTubers I review. However, Georden is different from the others in that his resume isn't what you'd call big, more like a good thing in a small package. I hadn't heard of him until recently when I saw today's video in my feed, and on top of that he's only made 2 other animations. The first being a short film called Sir Knight of Nothing, but the second being an animated series called Nomad of Nowhere. While I've only seen clips of the show, it looks like a pretty cute and charming western, and the short film, which I have seen, is a lovable feel-good adventure packed into 5 marvelous minutes. After seeing them both, it's easy to tell that Georden's style majors in cute wholesomeness, something that we all need despite acting like we don't, and something that applies to today's cartoon, Port by the Sea. Port by the Sea isn't run by a one-man crew. Similar to Enna or Hell of a Boss, it's an animation that was created by a whole team of people rather than just one guy with a computer, and it definitely shows. Not only does it look like something from TV, but its story and characters are anything but weak. It's easy to tell that this isn't some rushed out of the door and fell on the pavement animation, but an ambitious project formed from the collective effort of an entire team. But enough build-up, let's get into it. Hoist the sail and swab the poop deck, because it's time to set sail for Clip Show. Going into this watery wonder blind, I had no idea what the premise was. Turns out, I didn't have to wait too long to get an answer. Port by the Sea wears its lore on its sleeves, which under a lot of circumstances just screams desperate. But no, it's not fake confidence, it's bona fide confidence. What makes Port by the Sea's world so enjoyable to me is that it's really simple. I mean, yeah, there's a big lore dump in the beginning, but it's really not that compact. All we're given at the beginning is that this world was created by 4 gods, and when one of them turned evil, the others sacrificed themselves to create the moon as his prison. However, the moon went error 404 one day for reasons unknown, and its shards are corrupting the ocean. So now it's up to the small sailors, Umi, Port, and Jolly Roger to collect the pieces of the moon. If that premise sounds like Moby Dick meets Collectathon platformers to you, don't be so sure of yourself, because it also meets Gravity Falls. Despite the basic sounding premise, the show isn't afraid to make some mysteries. There's still a lot we don't know about any other lands outside the setting of the pilot, or how things like the moon shards work, and there's a storm of questions surrounding the siblings too. But at the same time, so what? More questions just means more opportunities for neat answers, and there's a lot of potential to be explored with this world. Even then, what we do see is already a great set of set pieces for a classic case of cartoon adventure. The quest Port, Umi, and Jolly Roger go on to fix their boat is neat in that there isn't a lot of movement in it. I'll go into why I like them as characters later, but the path they tread does have action and jokes in it, just not constant excitement. The times when things do get more energized are definitely enjoyable, but for the most part the pilot's main feature is its ability to just be, really. Even the story this episode tells is about, fittingly enough, patience and how dead ends are frustrating but manageable with the right mindset. Many of the scenes are more slow-paced and atmospheric than focused on the funny. And while that sounds boring on paper, it actually works really well by having the pace of the show be slow but have the plot always be moving. Each scene has a purpose and flows into the next one logically, which is the mark of banger storytelling. This is mostly helped by how the show isn't focused on telling jokes so much as it is telling a good story. And even then, what humor there is flows so seamlessly into the dialogue, it's practically Siamese twins with it. I won't talk that much about the comedy since, it's subjective, but I will say that it manages to mix visual gags and dialogue-based jokes in a really smooth way and with a really good balance. Port by the Sea's writing is subtle, but only in the places where it counts. The world building and backstory are referenced and are clearly building up to something, but the show is a lot more mellow and fluent than, let's be real, most entertainment nowadays. It's slow, but it's not boring, which might sound crazy in our day and age, but hey, so does the idea that the moon can be exploded. Speaking of which... Well, sailors aren't exactly known for their outward charm and style, so I guess something had to give. But they are known for their bad bass sea shanties, so that's an upside. To be blunt, Port by the Sea's art style doesn't try to stand out among modern animation. When it comes to the art of making moving doodles nowadays, we have the conventional wisdom of, if you're gonna fill my looking circles with cartoons, it's classy to do it like nobody else. Generic doesn't mean the same thing as bad though, and while Port by the Sea doesn't try to look special, that doesn't mean it's not trying at all. It's clear that the direction for the looks of Port by the Sea didn't go into what it looked like compared to others, but how it looked on its own. And in the final result, it looks great. For starters, the character designs are simple but pleasing to the eyes. Since we've only seen the pilot so far, we don't get that many designs. But what we do see never comes off as lazy. While most of the characters are made up of simple shapes, they compensate for that with the layers of their clothes. The best examples of this are Umi and Port, as their clothes aren't just generic patterns but actually layered with several ornaments, like Umi's overalls and Port's hat and jacket. It's not only good drip, it helps them stand out as interesting characters rather than background filler. A lot of the supporting characters we see share this principle too, as most of their designs are also simple shapes dressed in stellar Port Town attire. Oh yeah, the town! Is this place popular in tourist season? Because this site is beautiful! While the backgrounds mostly boil down to just being detailed and full of life, something that's not exactly unique to online animations anymore. If something's effective, it's effective. It's not only the quality of them either, but the sheer quantity. As we go to so many different locations, it gets hard to list just how many pictures were drawn for this setting alone. But character design and backgrounds can't help you if they don't look good in motion. But luckily, this animation doesn't get seasick easily. The actual animation, while definitely imperfect, screams grade A quality, just how ambitious they get with this one episode. Even barring the grand action scene at the end, the movements of the characters manage to flow really well together without coming off as awkward or stiff. What I think is impressive though is that even when there's less frames than usual, it gets distracting but doesn't subtract from anything. The lack of in-between frames is noticeable, but there's still enough present to easily tell how the characters would move with more frames. Just don't use interpolation, that stuff reeks. Yes, consistent frame rates would be appreciated, but first, low frame rates can come off as radical if executed properly. And second, it doesn't really matter that much when the action is as gripping as this. Lastly, my favorite part of this show's overall feel, the atmosphere. While the animation is good, the way those scenes are presented is more valuable than the Dutchman's treasure. Most of the time when a scene needs to be slow, there is no music to tell you how to feel. Some scenes just come and go and you're meant to feel out the characters' moods to feel out the scene's mood. It's a really mature choice that puts a lot of trust in the audience, but it's a gamble that more than pays off. Granted, there's still plenty of moments where there is background music to guide your emotions, but I don't think they take anything away from the scenes that don't use music. The songs this show does have are certified sea shanties. While similar in style and just how it's kind of generic, the music does its job well not by distracting from the experience, but by enhancing it. It's hard to describe outside of just plain old good music, but trust me when I say there's some seriously catchy tunes. It's like if the Misadventures of Flapjack got an increased budget for its OST. Plus, Beyond exists. That alone should convince you that the music wasn't an afterthought. Overall, Port by the Sea's presentation isn't that interesting in the way it looks, but in the way it sounds. Yeah, it's really simplistic, and in my personal opinion, a little more style and distinction could carry it a long way. But its atmosphere of quaint quietness and respect for the audience are what makes it stand out the most. The thing's like a whale. Yeah, it just looks like a big fish, but it's surprisingly good with sounds. Every sea-bearing vessel needs a crew, and with the one we got, it's more like a sea-dominating vessel, with a waterproof paint job. The heart and soul of this aquatic attraction is none other than Umi, Port, and Jolly Roger themselves. What makes them work as leads is that all three of them have different perspectives and outlooks on their problems, but none of them are necessarily wrong or just make things worse. Each sibling, yes, I'm counting the crab as a sibling, fills a role that the others can't, and as a result, you get the idea that all three of them really do need each other. Umi is logical, focused, and prefers quick solutions to ones that take long, while Port is distractible and impulsive, but patient enough to see how things play out until the end. All the while, Jolly Roger is the immature baby bro and admittedly not that useful in certain situations, but knows when to focus on what's important and do what he can to be useful. What makes this trio of pipsqueak pirates so likable is that none of them are ever irrational or unreasonable throughout these 18 minutes. Each of their approaches to problem solving makes sense, and it's hard to say which one of them is right most of the time. On top of that, whenever they do fall to bickering, you get the sense that they still care for and appreciate each other's presence during it. They don't fight because they hate each other, they fight because, well, they're siblings. What siblings don't fight at least 3 times per day? The relationship between Umi and Port really does come off as two children who have a familial bond and just want to complete their goal of fixing the moon, with Jolly Roger acting as the unconditional love of the pet dog, crab. Plus, they just seem like genuinely good and selfless people at heart. What makes me respect this brother, sister, pincher trio is that it doesn't feel like they're adventuring for the sake of thrills or excitement, but that they really do want to fix the moon and save the world from an evil force. While they do get distracted at times, their entire route comes off as them doing everything they can to find the moon shard and get back on track, rather than them just winning through luck while mindlessly goofing off. They come across as smart and selfless kids rather than dumb and bratty kids most people assume all kids are. Ugh, stupid grown-ups. As for the side characters, most of the townsfolk we meet are likable in their own right, mainly because they're just nice. It's pleasant to see Umi and Port interact with the locals in a normal chat, as opposed to a constant comedy fest where everyone they meet has to act as absurd as possible for 24/7. Everyone looks like they're just people trying to live their lives rather than excessively zany NPCs meant to move the plot along. The only exception to this is Ankle, who presumably will come back if this pilot gets turned into a show. Port by the Sea's people are charming sweets. By cutting out most of the jerkiness we see today in favor of a pleasant oceanside village, Port by the Sea makes it easy to feel cozy. They say that sailors are tough, but sometimes a little softness is needed, and let me tell you, Umi, Port, and Jolly Roger are sugary pieces of saltwater taffy, even if they are kind of salty. Man, what a good haul! Port by the Sea's pilot is simple. I think that part's plainly obvious enough, but it also proves that simple doesn't mean bad. While its basic animation and looks weigh it down a little, its intriguing world and likable characters more than make up for it. Plus, this was just the pilot episode, and if we get more of this story, then changes can be made. Even then, I don't want what I've said today to steer the direction of this project. This pilot belongs to Georden, and it's not my place to tell him how to make his art. Just thought I'd give my 2 cents is all. I do sincerely hope that this gets made into a series, because there is a ton of untapped potential in this world and these characters that's just begging to be explored. Even if the rest of the show is like this, it'll still be a flawed but wonderful journey. Georden, I think what you made is passionate, and I wish you and your crew the best of luck on your creative endeavors. I can tell you all cared about this project, and I'm happy to have watched it as it is. You've made a stupendously sturdy ship. My only hope is that you'll get to sail it into new waters. This was one tale of woe worth hearing. Have a great whenever, everybody!